second live cafe chat for digital nomads beyond 50. We're going to be focusing on digital nomad financials and all that you need to do as well as not do in regards to under that topic. We'll also talk a little bit and share a little bit about financial, travel insurance as well too, which is kind of like my wheelhead or whatever they call it nowadays. We have with us Lisa R. Mitchell. She refers to herself as a recovering international banker. And we also have Cheryl Poole, who is our digital nomad tax expert. Now, some people say, well, what is exactly digital nomads beyond 50? Yes, there are definitely more than 50 of us in the group. We're almost to 500, which is really quite outstanding for a group that just started about 6 months ago. And basically, digital nomads beyond 50 is for those who are in their 40s on up, who are either currently travel working, planning to, or just curious about travel working. And actually, at the mention of planning, I've got to put in a little plug here for my recently, just this past week, published Digital Nomad Planner Journal. And this is not just simply your typical planner journal where you've got a whole lot of blank pages that you need to fill. You will notice when you get your own copy, hopefully, that I have prompts in here. I've collected this information by speaking with other digital nomads who are experienced with this travel. And we have prompts to help you understand what you need to consider as you prepare to be a digital nomad. Of course, there's still space for notes in the journal, their travel quotes as well. As I mentioned before, we have packing lists and everything that's involved with the packing lists, such as electronic packing lists, software, what do you need, business software as well too. And because of something that I just recently experienced, I came back into Dallas to work for the next 4 months, September, October, November, December, for Medicare and affordable health care open enrollment. So I did my re-entry. And so this is very fresh information here on preparing for re-entry, which is a preparation in and of itself. So once again, in the email that you'll be receiving following up all those who you registered, you'll get the information regarding this, as well as some PDFs and other information from our speakers as well. So let's see who else we need to let in to the room. And here we go. There we go. And let's get started here. To get us started, Cheryl Poole is going to share with us what we need to be discussing, or your questions regarding financial preparedness and budgeting for travel. And then Lisa will take it away, and she's going to be answering our questions about creating a financial strategy, banking, credit cards, credit investment, moving money globally, as well as just so much more, because she, as I said, she has a world of 20-some experience in this area. 20-some years of experience in this area to share with us.
Thanks for making me younger. I'll take that any day.
All righty. So I am going to go ahead and leave it over, hand it over to Cheryl. And there we go. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm really excited. And when I thought about this get together today, I thought, you know, what I would really like to do is talk about the big picture of becoming a digital nomad. So I put together a very large look from 32,000 feet up on my 4-step plan to becoming a digital nomad. And it's the DWDW. So you're going to have to pay real attention to figure out what those represent. So this is Cheryl's 4-step plan to becoming a digital nomad. So step number 1 is to decide. Decide that you want to be a digital nomad and let everyone know. And you're going to find that some people are going to be very excited about it. Some people are going to say, oh my gosh, she's going to be traveling. But I believe that a lot of it has to do with mindset. And you may think, oh, I can never do this because I can't afford it, or I can't leave my home, or I've got my family. But if it is one of those things that is just in your bones and something you have always wanted to do, I believe that you need to decide that you're going to do it and get out there and do it. So step number 1, first D, is to decide. Step number 2 is a fun one. Where in the world do I want to go? And the whole world is open to us. Now, I know that we have COVID, and you've got to take into account hot spots around the world, and can I go now, or maybe you have to go later. Actually, in the year 2019, there used to be 3.2 million traditional job holders who were digital nomads. By the year 2020, there were 6.3 million people, and who knows what the number is now. So people are definitely out there doing it. And if they're out there doing it, that means that you can too. And just think about how exciting it'll be looking at different places around the world and trying to decide where in the world you want to go. So number 1 was to decide. Number 2 was where in the world. Number 3, and I had to get a little creative about this, is dinero, which we all know is money. And we need to decide or figure out how we're going to pay for this lifestyle. And I believe there's 3 different ways to do it, and then 1 optional way that I wouldn't do. But number 1 is either you're an independent contractor or you own your own business, and you can travel and work from anywhere anyway. So that's number 1. Number 2 would be you have a job that will allow you to work remotely. And we know that that's happening more and more now. So that is even more of a real possibility. Number 3 is you've just got it together and you've got enough money to pay for it yourself. So you've got enough money in savings and investments. And if you want to get out there, you can just do it. Number 4, which I don't suggest, is to go with no money at all in a backpack and think I'll work my way through. Now, if we were 20 years old, maybe, but right now, I don't know if that would be such a good idea. So I really believe that either you have your own business so you can work from anywhere in the world, your job will allow you to work as a remote employee, or you already have the money. And we're going to be talking, Lisa will definitely be talking more about budgeting and banking and all of those details. And also, as we go along, this is just a big picture, remember. There'll be lots of information that comes up underneath each one of these. So number 1, D, was to decide. Number 2 was the W, where in the world do we want to go? Number 3 was dinero, which is the money. And number 4 is, what do I do with all of my stuff? Because we know that all of us have, throughout the years, we've just got a lot of stuff. Now, either you may live in an apartment, or you may have a house that you're going to have to decide what you're going to do with it. You may have a car that you're going to have to do something with. And then, of course, there is all of your stuff. And so that's definitely something you would need to think about if you decide to become a digital nomad. Do you want to sell your house and use the money to become a digital nomad? Do you want to rent it out, lease it out on a long-term basis? Or do you want it to be an Airbnb? All of those are definite possibilities. With your car, same thing. Do you want to lease it? Do you want to sell it? Or do you want to store it? Maybe you have a friend that'll let you keep it in their garage, but so you can have it when you come back to the States. And then there's the big question of, what do you do with all of your stuff? And that is one of those things that you really need to think about downsizing. And I have a real philosophy in terms of downsizing. If you can replace something for less than $20 within 20 miles and within 20 minutes, then you don't need to have it, basically. If there are things that are very special to you, of course you keep them. But if there's just stuff that you could replace, you don't need to keep it for a rainy day. It's time to get rid of it. So whether you're having garage sales or you're donating it, or you decide that you want to store some things, those are real decisions that you'll have to make. And keep in mind, storage is expensive and it's going up day by day. So you don't want to have a problem with storage as you're traveling through Mexico. So that is my 4-step plan. Number 1 was to decide. Number 2 was where in the world I want to go. Number 3 is the dinero and the money and how am I going to finance this lifestyle. And number 4 was what am I going to do with all of my stuff? So there's a quick overview, my DWDW plan to becoming a digital nomad. That's it.
Well, whoa, wow, you really went through that very quickly, Cheryl. You gave us some very concise and very informative information in a very short period of time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you are gonna stay online so that when we open the floor for live questions, people can address those questions to you directly, correct? Excellent, excellent. Okay, now, as I mentioned before, Lisa R. Mitchell is recovering, as she said, international banker. She's got a lot of good information regarding that, as well as she is also a digital nomad and has that experience as well. So Lisa, I'm going to hand it over to you. I know that you've come prepared to talk to us once again about banking, credit, investment, even abroad, moving your money globally, and so much more that's involved with being a digital nomad and making this all happen from a financial standpoint. Thank you, Lisa. You take it away.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here again. I've kind of been off the stage for the last couple of months as I'm planning my next expat assignment in this stage of my life, having to deal with issues I didn't have to deal with, like elder care for my parents, and also financial issues I didn't, when I moved in my 20s, when I moved in my 30s abroad, moved in my 40s, even my last assignment in China, I didn't, really think about retirement or some of the other issues, Social Security. So I'm going to speak about those briefly. And since I've actually been off of the stage a little bit, and by that I mean I haven't been doing podcasts, I haven't been, doing conferences, it's given me an opportunity to kind of step back and listen to some of the other financial groups. And I always like to keep my ear to the ground and keep my finger on the pulse of people living abroad, digital nomad, expat, world traveler. What are their financial concerns? What are they thinking about? So you'll hear me talk about some of that. I'm really glad that Cheryl started out. Cheryl always has her points and her strategy, which I really love. I'm going to wrap back around her because I've said 2022 is going to be the year of minimalization for the Mitchell family. I just closed down a storage in San Francisco. I'm closing down my one in New York, and Cheryl's absolutely right. I got to get that 2020 down. Minimalization, definitely when you live a global lifestyle. I mean, I have stuff from Shanghai, I have stuff from Vietnam. I look at my storage and I can see my whole, global lifestyle in my storage that I was paying a pretty penny for. So let me just kind of go back to kind of what Cheryl said, because I'm also a big believer in you have to have a financial strategy before you go abroad. I see this time and time again where people fail. They don't think about the key components. They don't think about the key steps. I'll flip on Facebook or someone will actually, I was just texting someone who'll say to me, well, I'm freaking out because now I want to put away some money for retirement, but I don't have a US address, okay? Which is one of the things I'll talk about. I don't have a US phone number. I didn't know such and such financial institution won't open a brokerage the US anymore. I'm a non-resident. What am I going to do? These are things you really need to plan for. You don't want to be in Singapore or Bangkok and find out that, you want to participate in the stock market that, despite COVID, seems to have done very well, or in the cryptocurrency market or whatever. And you didn't know that for US citizens, US expats living abroad, there are a lot of rules and regulations that stop that, especially in Europe. Europe has quite a few. I know Cheryl usually talks about taxes, so I won't be remiss, and I'm sure she'll talk about it again. I still see a lot of people that don't know that US citizens, US permanent residents are taxed on worldwide income. Again, you need to do the pre-work before. You need to have your financial strategy before. What are you going to do? If you can't invest in index funds or mutual funds while you're abroad, are you going to be okay for 1 or 2 years investing in its individual stocks? You have to know that. So you really have to have a financial strategy that encompasses banking. What bank are you going to use? I see some people have questions. Let's generalize. So I've been in international banking for years and years, was part of a division that banked expats at Citibank, then ran a division at Wells Fargo. And even though now we have Wise, we have Revolut, we have all these different companies, they still, US regulators still look at anyone kind of foreign lifestyle as high risk. As a matter of fact, I usually also give people the resource of the bank N26. N26 was a German digital mobile first bank. They've been in the market maybe about 5 years as well. Maybe longer. A lot of these fintech companies started post 2008 financial crisis. Just read they're exiting the US market. The US market is very, very tough. And what does that mean? That means for banking US citizens, it's very, very difficult as well. There are countless stories of US citizens having their bank accounts closed down while they're overseas and they don't have a bank. And when that happens, and I've had those conversations in financial services where my compliance and risk guy gets a ruling from Washington and he says, I'm sorry, Lisa, I have to close down your division. I'm like, wait a minute, what are my customers going to do? And usually I was always able to work something out, but you're not, businesses, financial institutions make business decisions. And sometimes the business decision is to close down the international division. So that happens a lot. So you need to be also prepared for that. Yes, you should. I always think you should have a bank that's mobile, global, kind of, in the clouds that you can use, but don't also close out your main bank account. I still see a lot of people closing out their US bank account. I don't understand why. During the economic impact, for the first time, US expats were eligible for that. There was so many people who were like, I don't have a US bank account. I closed it down when I moved to Norway, when I moved to Sweden. Don't do that, especially if you're just starting out. You're year 1, year 2, maybe year 5, you realize you don't need the US bank account you've had for a long time. So again, a financial strategy is something you should have that takes care of banking, your banking goals, your investments, your budgeting, retirement, education planning. Back or the plan for that too. Moving down to, and one of the things that usually happens, and we see this go wrong a lot, is with credit. People move overseas and don't realize that US credit history does not travel. So most people just pay off all their debt and they think that's great. But your credit obligations, they stay on your credit report for 7 years. Before you go overseas, always check your credit report. Now with COVID, I think it used to be you could get one free every year. I think they started every week. They may still be doing that. Absolutely do that. Do that while you're overseas, because identity theft is huge when you live overseas. So you want to be able to do that, and you want to know what's happening, and you want to put on a credit alert and credit freeze, and I don't know why they do this, credit freeze and credit fraud alert and manage your credit, because the day you have to come back to the US, credit is king in the US. And then also, what if, like right now, interest rates are low and you want to buy a piece of property, and let's say you're in Madagascar and you want to leverage your credit in the US, maybe you want to take out a home equity loan, or maybe you want to use credit cards. That's something a US credit history can help you do. US credit histories don't travel. I also get a lot of pushback from people going, oh, I had this debate with someone a couple of weeks ago. Oh, I'm in South Africa and they can use my US credit history, which I don't know how companies are doing that, because that's actually a no-no, and there's not supposed to be any open access. Like a foreign country is not really supposed to have the ability to look into your US credit history. And honestly, just my experience as a banker, my experience as an expat, I would not sign off on it. I think that's a whole other class in itself, an article in itself. Moving money, another key thing, and I see people don't think about it until they get stuck in your financial strategy. How am I going to move money? And the thing to think about, it's not always, oh, well, I don't want to pay an incoming wire fee. I don't want to pay an outgoing wire fee. If you're stuck in a foreign country and you need to make your mortgage payment, your child's education payment, or pay your student loan, I guarantee you, you will pay whatever amount it is to exchange the money and then send the money to your bank account. So you want to think about how you can do that cheaply. And the other thing to remember with foreign exchange and moving money, and even with investments, a lot of apps that we use and a lot of methodology, well, a lot of apps, I would say, and services we use, you may not be able to use that overseas, or it may look differently overseas. PayPal in the US was very different from PayPal in China. And people constantly say, oh, I'll just move money, I'll use. Very different in terms of limitations, different in terms of regulations. Some of these other famous apps that I see people using, like Robinhood. Can you use Robinhood in Singapore or the DR or something like that? Would you want to use that over Wi-Fi? Is Robinhood or any of these other financial apps, are they going to let you do it? Even with a VPN, which you should always travel with, a virtual private network. So those are some things to think about. I've had friends when I lived in Asia who were like, oh, I tried to get onto my whatever brokerage and they wouldn't let me. And I go, yeah, that's because we're in a foreign country. They're not going to, they have their firewalls. They're not going to just let you go and invest. So you need to plan for that. I'm an active investor. I like, stock picking. If I see the stock market tanks, I like to get right on and, buy some stock. I couldn't always do that when I was in China. So that's something I had to think about, and I learned I needed to plan for. And also, let's talk about technology. Technology is great. We all want to be mobile and global, but when I tell you, even myself, when I live overseas, I swear I talk to my banker more than I ever talk to them at all. So you really want to pick a financial services company, whether it's an app, because usually the app, right? You're thinking of the front end. All the international divisions I worked in and managed, they were always virtual. And let me tell you, the front end is nothing. These fancy, slick front ends, even for some of these, the insurance companies, travel insurance, it's the back end and what's happening in the operations that's most important. And that's what you really need to think about. Okay, so you need to kind of dig deep and ask questions about that. And also when you're choosing your bank account, what kind of functionality are you looking for? You need mobile check deposit, right? If somebody sends you a check, you want to be able to upload it. People still use checks in the United States. I mentioned customer service. Think about what functionality you're going to need. Credit cards, as I said, looking at your credit report, remember you want a no-fee credit card where you don't pay any foreign exchange fees, no foreign transaction fees. Those are pretty easy to get right now because it's very, very common. So think about that. Retirement and investment, as I said before, I'm seeing a lot of people freak out. Maybe they've been overseas 5 years and then they realize, hey, I haven't saved anything for retirement, or I want to start. And then the country that they're living in, they realize that either there's going to be a huge tax obligation, or they're going to US brokerages and telling them they're overseas and they're like, no, we don't want to, we're not dealing with you. Or they're a resident of a country that says, no, you cannot invest in these kind of things. So you really need to think about it. I'm sure Cheryl will tell me for taxes, it's publication 54. Everyone should read that for people who are living abroad. And you should always also find out what kind of tax treaty the US has with the country you'll be going to or countries. And then in terms of Social Security, I don't know if you're going to be working in the country or if you're going to be retiring there, or if you don't have enough points, you want to look at the totalization agreement, because that governs contributions, your social insurance contributions. So you really want to think about that. What else do I have on here? Oh, I wanted to mention about budgeting, and someone else, well, let's take the two. How much should I save to move abroad? I don't know. How much should Siobhan save? How much should Cheryl save? How much should Adrian save? How much should Lance save? The question is going to be different for everybody. I think everyone now, kind of everything we've been through with COVID, is comfortable with kind of the 1 year rule, right? But it really comes down to knowing what your budget is. It's funny, I'm not going to do a shameless plug right now, but I do have a workbook which takes you through all of this. And one of the things is it helps you really look at a budget. How many of us know, if I ask you, what's your monthly budget? What are your monthly expenses? What are they? Do you know what they are? Do you know what they're going to be when you move overseas? If you don't know those things, how can you decide on how much money you should take abroad? So let's say my remaining expenses in the US are going to be $1,000. My potential expenses overseas are going to be $1,500 a month. That's $2,500. Add, my brain is a little slow today, add a 25% slush fund to that. And that is kind of the minimum that you will need monthly. Multiply that by how many months is comfortable for you. I really say if I'm living overseas, 18 months, a year, it sounds kind of dicey, living in a post-COVID world, I'd say 18 months. And I have all this in my in the workbook. Also, before I leave, I want to mention foreign exchange volatility, because people don't mention that a lot. And so because we're used to the US dollar, which is the reserve currency of the world, I guess, until Bitcoin, takes its place. So we're not used to always dealing with a lot of foreign currencies, but you really need to know, especially if you're working in a foreign country, not even if you're working, but if you're, you're living there and you're maintaining a life there, what happens if the currency devalues? Or what happens if it appreciates? Which happens even the Chinese yuan, which is a controlled currency, versus something like the British pound or euro, which is free floating. Even though the government controlled that, it changed. There were 1 or 2 times when it changed. So that means that the money I was earning, maybe in China, that wasn't enough to pay my monthly expenses. So I have to have savings. So you really need to plan for that. I don't see enough people talking about exchange rate volatility. It could be just because it's something that, especially if we're in the US, we're so used to the US dollar, we don't really talk about. It goes without saying that we need to plan for emergencies and medical. And I know, Siobhan, maybe this is a good lead in, you're going to talk about insurance. We all know medical insurance is a non-negotiable, even though I hear people now and then say, why do you need to get it? You can forget that. Even before COVID, countries were getting dicey. They were getting tired, foreign countries getting tired of US citizens coming there and just coming to a cheap country and saying, hey, you have universal or free healthcare, I'll take advantage of it. I already knew COVID, you're going to be required to have some kind of health insurance. And definitely it's something you need. Take it from someone. I did have health insurance. Everyone has probably heard this story, but it's worth repeating again, how I got deathly ill in China. One day I was fine, kissing a cute boy. Next thing I know, I was flat on my back and I was in very good health. 10-day hospital stay, that was mid 5 figures. And my insurance company paid 98% of it. And I had insurance in the US, but I didn't have insurance in China. I was thinking about getting it, but I actually hadn't been in China long enough. So that's something you need to factor into your expenses as well. And you need to really make sure you have a really good, solid insurance plan. I know Siobhan's going to talk about insurance and what we need, and I'm always interested. I just had this discussion with my, I'm at my workspace, and the owner is going to Thailand. And I asked him, well, are you going to, you have your insurance? I'm just about to talk about that. He goes, well, I didn't buy it yet. Do you have any, I said, well, where are you going? You're going to Thailand. I don't know how many people realize Thailand, I think, is, besides, I think Bangkok has been voted the hottest place on earth. It's also, I think, #1 in motor vehicle fatalities. And I love Thailand, was thinking about retiring there, but Bangkok is it's like a hot mess. Last time I was in Bangkok about 4 years ago, cracked my elbow. And yeah, the streets are crazy. So you need to think about insurance. And I asked him, well, are you going to do motorbike? And he goes, oh yeah. I said, well, you need insurance for that for that as well. So I think that's everything I had. Really wanted to emphasize about the budget, knowing your expenses, knowing your potential expenses, and then adding a slush fund to that. And then kind of multiplying that by how long you think you'll be overseas. And then, as Cheryl kind of said, I'm going to end it this way, and I've been doing this since I was like a kid in my 20s, living and working overseas, like I was 21 years old, working on the, London like stock exchange. Things I did in my 20s, I want to, moving overseas kind of without money, without an income, that's kind of gone with the hula hoop. Countries want to know why you're there, what you're doing, what your sources of income, and that you can support yourself. Look at a lot of these, well, the majority of these digital nomad visas, most of them have income requirements, and for good reason. You can't just, kind of hang out anymore. And especially as well with COVID, right? We want to track and we want to know where people are. So from a financial standpoint, even if you're working in a foreign country, you have that income, always make sure you have independent and remote income as well. And I think I'll end it there and open it for questions. I hope that was good, Siobhan. I didn't talk too long, but wanted to kind of it's been a while, wanted to give everybody just, just kind of the basics and, kind of the guideline that I kind of use when I speak to people. So that's all I have. Is that good?
Yes, that is excellent. Thank you very much. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to very briefly just share a little bit about the travel insurance and travel medical insurance. As I mentioned before, all of those who registered, you'll be getting an email with follow-up information. But one of the key questions that most people have for me is, okay, I see travel medical insurance, and then I also see medical insurance. Now, for travel. Now, so what is the difference between the two, and do I need both of them, or how does this all work? Well, first, there really are 3 different types of insurance in regards to travel. There is travel insurance, which covers a lot of, like, your flight got delayed and all of a sudden you need to stay overnight. You got equipment that was stolen or lost or that type of thing. That's insurance regarding your transport, to ensure your transportation and everything that's involved with your transportation while you're traveling. Now, travel medical insurance is going to be involved with your health and protecting your health and restoring your health if necessary while you are traveling. And frankly, in the worst case scenario, a good travel medical insurance will also cover a family member or a friend to fly over there to you, wherever you are, be with you at your bedside, so you're not in a foreign country very, very ill and alone. And in the worst case scenario, a good travel insurance program, travel medical, as well as travel, will also cover your mortal remains being returned to your home country. So that's two, travel medical, and then there is actual travel medical insurance that encompasses both. So there's travel, there's medical insurance while you're traveling, and then there is true travel medical, which is a combination, an all-encompassing combination of both. So those are the three different types. And then very briefly, one of the things that you need to keep in mind when you're looking for or looking at travel insurance, particularly as a digital nomad, is, can my insurance be arranged and changed and edited while I am traveling? There are some travel medical insurance plans that are really more designed for people. They're great plans. I actually represent three different companies. But some of them are really great for shorter term travel. You need to book it within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, no less than 24 hours of when you were leaving your home country and starting your travel. And once you are traveling, there's not a whole lot, there may not be a whole lot of flexibility to change your itinerary or to change your plans and extend your insurance while you're traveling. And then there are also companies that specialize, particularly in digital nomad. One country that I will mention in the PDF that I send out is there's World Nomads, which by the name also is excellent, as very good for digital nomads. The only thing that I need to caution about World Nomads, which is, as I mentioned before, I also represent, them or affiliated with them, is that World Nomads does not, up until recently, they didn't cover COVID. Now they are covering COVID, but they won't cover COVID in red listed countries that the CDC has listed as high level caution for COVID. Well, if you look at the CDC red listed countries, it pretty much looks like the entire world is red listed by the CDC. Even the United States is red listed as well by the CDC for travel. So what good is a travel medical insurance if it's null and void if you happen to be traveling in a CDC red listed country? Now, the other company that it also has excellent plans for global or world nomads, not world nomads, but Safety Wing is the other company that has stepped up to craft themselves as true plans for digital nomads. They even have plans for working teams as digital nomads. They have a nomad travel plan, which operates very much as a hybrid travel medical plan. But then they also have a nomad health plan, which is specifically for your health and covers your health. And then they also have, as I mentioned before, for remote teams. I'm not going to take up a whole lot of time because you want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask your questions and jump into the conversation. But the PDF that I'm going to include in the email will address all of that. So what we'd like to get started is some of the questions that people have. Let's see, Lori, she asked, what health insurance company do you recommend for travel in Europe? Now, it's not just a matter of specifically to a particular continent. If it's a good health insurance from a digital nomad standpoint, as I mentioned before, World Nomad or Safety Wing, it's going to be global. They don't break it down and change it, particularly Safety Wing. They don't change their plans based on what country that you're going to or at this state. So, I mean, things are changing. If it gets to the point where insurance companies realizing that they're exposing themselves to a great amount of risk, they may change their policy, but if you've already have your plan under that policy, they're not going to pull it back from people who are already out there traveling. But you want to make sure that what is the situation right now as you are arranging for your travel insurance at this moment, at whatever moment that they are traveling. Because I said before, they all are looking to cover their risk, particularly we're still living in a pandemic environment. Let's see, another question I think we might have, this is a question, I'm going to wrap up, as I mentioned before, what I have to say about travel insurance. More details are going to be in the PDF. But here are some questions that were sent to us. This is a banking question. Do I need an online bank such as Wise or Monzo, or is a major US bank? I'm assuming that this is someone who, we do have global membership to Digital Nomad Beyond 50, but I'm assuming this question is coming from someone in the US. So, or is a major US bank sufficient? So that sounds like a question for you to address, Lisa, please.
Sure, no problem. I always say you need to have more than one bank account. Wise is amazing. I have a Wise account, and they're really made for people who live a global lifestyle. In terms of they became prominent with foreign exchange, and they've branched out. Monzo, I thought, was still UK based. I wasn't sure they were opening accounts for US citizens at this point. And as I said before, international is still a tough sell for US financial institutions. Most of them have closed down their international divisions. It's no coincidence that Wise, Monzo, N26, Revolut, the top people for people who live a global lifestyle, top bank financial institutions, no surprise that they're all European. They all came out of the UK, out of the financial crisis, and they've opened US offices. So yes, you do always have a mobile and global account. I always call it a third account. You know, for some people, maybe it's a second account that you can always get to. And we used to say outside, let's say you are living in Singapore, you're living in China, you always have your home account, which would be the US host bank account, and then a third emergency account. And that account is usually the mobile and global one, and meaning you can get to it anywhere in the world. So I hope that answers your question.
Excellent, excellent. One of the other questions that was sent in for us to address is taxes. What system, and I think this one is, what system should I use to manage income from multiple sources and expenses? So, Cheryl, do you think that you can respond to that? Because regarding the taxes there, and what kind, and the same person had two questions. I might as well put both of them out there. What kind of expenses are deductible as a digital nomad?
Hey. Well, it really depends on what you're comfortable with in terms of managing your income and expenses. But the first thing I need to say is you need to do that. You need to manage what income is coming in, where it's coming from, and when it's coming in, because exchange rates are different. If you've got money coming in from different countries, you're going to need to know the date that that money came in. I had put together a worksheet on income and expenses and a basic Excel spreadsheet that people could use. And maybe I'll give it to Siobhan and she can send it out with the information. But it listed the the different categories for income and expenses in a simple Excel spreadsheet that people could use. There's also software out there, but again, it also depends on what you feel comfortable with, whether it's QuickBooks or FreshBooks. Lisa may know of some other software that people have used, but it really depends on how complicated or how simple you want it to be. In terms of expenses, a lot of it depends on what are you doing while you're traveling, while you're being a digital nomad. A big hint, if you are, for example, a blogger, a travel blogger, guess what? You get to write off almost anything, because anything business related, anything related to your business, you can write off as a business expense. And that would include your hardware, your computer, that would include any software you're using, that would include if you had to do any marketing, or if you had assistants helping you. There's just a wide variety of things you could do. So you need to think about, what are you using for business in the normal course of business? Those are the things that you can write off.
Excellent. And we have another sort of financial or tax issue. Are there any, this is from Lori in our audience, our live audience, are there any financial or tax issues with traveling indefinitely without established residency in another country? I am renting my home and my businesses are US based, so keeping US banks and address, but I plan to have a second home in France. Yay, that sounds wonderful. Can I come visit, Lori, as a base, but only spend 90 days out of 180 there? So whether either of you, oh, thank you. Absolutely, she says. So thank you. So I'm putting that out there to either you, Cheryl, or to Lisa to respond to Lori's question. And before you get started, anyone else who would like to open your mic, and you can ask questions directly if that is easier than typing it out. So once again, who's ready to give a response to Lori for her question?
I'll let Cheryl answer the majority, but I'll give a quick. Lori hit on something that was two things that are important. One is France is really tough for US expats in terms of taxes. I hear a lot of complaints from expats. So I would keep my ear to the ground on that in terms of investment, taxation, things like that. And make sure you stay connected to some of the expat groups and the IRS on that. Then Lori, in the expat groups, I mean like the ones that are like Arrow, American Association of Residents Overseas, and there's another one that escaped me. The other thing, I'm glad Lori specified 90 days. People kind of get stuck, and Cheryl, I know she'll chime in and correct me on 180 days, or is it 181 days? From the research that I've done, countries are different. Like, that's no real hard and fast rule of when you become a tax resident, and people need to pay close attention to that, because I've heard sometimes some countries it's 181, sometimes it's 182. People really need to pay close attention to when they'll be, how they could be easily become a tax resident in a foreign country. Now I'll turn it over to Cheryl. Just wanted to mention those two things.
And I think it's exactly what Lisa said. Once you start getting into different countries and different scenarios, I would highly suggest that you go to someone who is a tax preparer for digital nomads or for expats, because it is so complicated and it's different for every single situation, where you would really be, it would be worth the investment of what it costs you. And it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg, but it will be worth it. Not only that, it'll help you do some planning, because you really want to plan out, is it 180 days? Is it 181 days? How long should I stay where I'm going to go? And highly benefit the tax ramifications of staying in that location. So I don't really, I haven't gotten that deep into tax preparation for people that are traveling all over the world. There are people and organizations that are experts at it and do it every single day. And that's really what you need is an expert.
Yeah, Lori, I can point you in the direct. I have a whole resource guide for just about everything people's asking for banks, for preparers that focus on this stuff, mail management, virtual mailboxes. I'm always happy to give people 1 or 2 names off the list, because from time to time I do monetize it. So, and in my workbook, I have some names for sure, resources. So, let me know.
So Lisa, how do we get your workbook?
The best thing right now, thank you, is to send me an email or DM me, because I'm going to be doing, it's info@livingaglobalLifestyle.com, and you can find me on Instagram, Living a Global Life. You can join my Facebook group, Living a Global Lifestyle, because I'm going to have a flash sale for sure in December. So I need to kind of, it'll definitely be before Christmas. And I need to clean up a couple things on my Shopify, and I might put it on Etsy as well. It's digital, it's a digital PDF. It's a digital PDF. And I don't know, maybe I'll talk to Siobhan about, when she sends out her PDF, how I can work with her to kind of, give people some more guidelines. Thanks so much, Cheryl.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to include that and any information, any additional information that you have, Lisa, as well as Cheryl, on the email that we send out to those who have registered, and therefore we have the emails for those who have expressed an interest in this information. I'm not mass mailing it out because I'm trying not to flood people with emails. So it'll go out to those who have registered. Thank you. I have another question from Susan. I am an EU, meaning European Union, for those who may not be familiar, and US citizen. How does that impact the medical and taxes that have been discussed?
So yeah, UK is a tricky one. The United States doesn't care if you're a dual citizen, right? You are taxed on worldwide income. So that's the first and foremost. And does everybody know what we mean by that? Like, it says it in the back of your passport, and what it really means, and I should go over this because and Cheryl will, I know, back me up with specifics. You're supposed to file, in most cases, a US tax return. There are income levels for individuals and couples, but you have to file. And that's where the IRS gets a lot of people. And the IRS is on a hunt. Do not believe this Bill Better and Trillion. The IRS is always on a hunt for expats. Go to any expat organization, they'll tell you that, because we're considered low-hanging fruit. So you must, in most cases, make sure you file. I've heard international tax accountants tell expats, even if you're filing all zeros, you should just file. I don't know about that. Where people also get confused is the foreign earned income exclusion, right? Because it changes every year. Can't remember what it's up to now, maybe 108K, and you can exclude your income. I've gotten into arguments with people about that. That is not that's not a given. You don't move overseas in the United States. Oh yeah, you moved overseas. No, you have to fill out a form for that. Also, some people decide not to do that, and then they do the foreign tax credit. So that's kind of what that, and I know the UK, I've lived in the UK twice. I know that they have their own tax system, HRM, revenue service, that's also aggressive. I have 1 or 2 resources. Actually, I get quite a few questions for people UK, US. UK, I think, was also one of the places where US citizens sued because of FACTA, Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. We didn't talk about that, which gives the United States tax authorities and foreign tax authorities to certify that you're a US citizen and give data about your bank account. That's a whole other ball of wax.
Mhm.
The medical question, I'm not really sure what you're asking. You know, feel free to clarify. The one thing I do hear from a lot of people in Europe, you know, who are retired 50, whatever, is when they want to qualify for Medicare. I get a lot of people who change their address, and Medicare really doesn't work. And Siobhan, of course, tell me if I'm wrong, doesn't work outside the US except in very rare cases. So I usually hear from people who go, oh, I changed my, I didn't know with Medicare that I was supposed to, you know, have a US address for it. So people get caught up with that. I hope that answers the question. Happy to answer any other questions or thoughts on that.
Lisa, there's one thing that I've questioned and I've gotten different answers for, and maybe you know the answer to this. For the foreign tax exclusion, that is on foreign income, correct? That's not on American.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Because people think if I go live in England and I make $150,000, I can exclude the first $108,000, and that's not what it's for, correct?
Wait a minute, say that again. If I go live in England.
If I go live in England and I'm a digital nomad and I make $150,000 from the US, I can just exclude the first 108, or, you know, whatever the limit is. But isn't the foreign tax exclusion on foreign income and not American income?
I think, yeah, I think it's, well, if I'm a digital nomad, okay, I understand, actually, I understand what you're saying. It's a good question. Because you're taxed on worldwide income. So let's say in 1 year I make, well, how does that work? If I'm living in the UK, how do I know what income came from America? And how do I know what income came from, oh, here, we're missing the important part. We're missing the important part. To qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion, sorry guys, taxes, I had to put that on the back burner in writing my book because it's intense. You have to meet two requirements, remember?
Yeah.
And one is about residency, the 100 and whatever days. And one is, or you have to declare the country you're in as your tax residency. So I remember I had to declare China was where I was a resident and where I could foresee myself working, because I remember at the time China only gave 1-year visas, but I had to say, well, I'm going to get another visa. I plan to be here for a while. So you have to meet those requirements. You got to meet those requirements. So once you meet one of those requirements, right, then it's foreign earned income. So
the real bottom line is you need to go to a professional who does this every single day.
We're giving you, we're giving you kind of
right, exactly. Yeah.
And the other thing people get confused, it's earned income, not like passive income.
Right.
Yeah, people get confused with that. Oh my God, I forgot the two major things. Gosh. The taxes is complicated.
Yes,
it's
very much so.
Yeah.
So excellent. Thank you very much for those responses. I'm just going to piggyback and respond to the Medicare question very quickly before I read the next question that has popped up here. The Medicare question is that you need to have, you typically need to have at least a US mailing address. I put the emphasis on a US mailing address. This could be a virtual mailbox for regarding your Medicare coverage. Medicare coverage typically will cover up to $50,000 of out of the country emergency medical. Emergency medical are the key comments here, or the key points here. It needs to be emergency, so ongoing care for maybe a possible chronic condition, that does not count. And in some cases, some of the travel insurance may or may not cover a chronic pre-existing condition. The other thing is that $50,000 that some of the Medicare Advantage plans, as well as some of the Medicare Supplement, or sometimes referred to as Medigap plans, that $50,000 in some cases has a time bracket on it. Some plans, your medical emergency had to have occurred within the first 60 days of you leaving the United States. So that is why I encourage even those people who have Medicare, which is, it's a good thing to hold on to. If you plan to be going back and forth, even if you're going to be away from the United States for a year or plus, it's a good thing to keep your Medicare. You can always put it on hold and start it up again, but that takes time, and that may not be the time, that amount of time is not what you need when you have an emergency. But I still very strongly encourage that even those who are under Medicare should also continue with their travel medical insurance that are specific for travel medical or travel health insurance, to make sure that they are covered from both sides, because if you're gone for 60 days, some Medicare Advantage plans or Medicare Supplement plans extend it to like 3 months or 45 days, they vary, but they do typically put a limit, as in you cannot be out there just spending time. I know people who I met in Ecuador, they still have their Medicare, but they also got private insurance in Ecuador so that they have that coverage. Those are people who actually have moved abroad and they're maintaining their Medicare still in the United States. So that's all I have to say right now about the Medicare part. I've got a couple of questions here. Lisa, you had asked, I'm an Irish citizen, which is a little different from the UK. The UK is not part of the EU. On medical, would I qualify for the EU medical system? From a health insurance standpoint, I know nothing about qualifying for the EU medical system. That would be something, Susan, why don't we put that out there for you to resource or research and come back, because I would really be interested in hearing, how that works as well too, myself. Lori had asked if I travel and not spend more than 180 days in one country. If I travel and not spend more than 180 days in one country, can I still keep my US address for tax purposes? This way, I avoid all of the hassles of being under a different country's tax and inheritance tax laws. And I'd like, as a current digital nomad, I've spent the last 18 months out of the United States. I can respond to that. Yes, you can't, in my situation, I was 13 months in Ecuador when I meant to spend only 3 weeks. Under that special circumstance of the COVID isolation and COVID lockdown for the country, they allowed people for their visas to be extended. And then I had to deal with it as soon as they lifted what was not the travel state of emergency, which was lifted in June or July of last year, but the sanitation state of emergency was what affected me, and that the sanitation as in the COVID protocols. And I still don't know exactly what was identified as sanitation, but it wasn't until March of this year, that I had to go in and declare myself there and get an extension and all that type of stuff so that I can still be free to return, which I do plan to do when I'm ready to go back and spend more time in Ecuador as well too. I personally, it's my intent I travel based on going to a country and deliberately primarily just staying during the extent or within the extent of their visitor's visa. Yes, they are digital nomads visas that are now available. A lot of them are somewhat costly, and It really doesn't apply unless you want to spend more than 6 months to up to 2 years in a country. So for those who are really on the digital nomad track of maybe you can just spend the 180 days, or I mean, in Belize as I have a Belize citizenship because that's, you know, where I'm originally from. But I noticed when, for the first time, when I came back to Belize this year, that the visitor's visa for Belize is only 30 days. I mean, they're really looking at the catchy cash on that, because after 30 days, you can stay longer, but you do have to pay to extend your Belizean visa, your visa for Belize. So I hope that addresses your question. And yes, just staying within the country. Now, one thing that a lot of countries are starting to pick up on, though, is people who just go across the border to another country for maybe a couple of weeks, and then they come back in for another 180 days. And a lot of countries are starting to put a bit of a halt to that kind of border jumping. So you need to do your research and find out what exactly are the stipulations that the countries has, because they change by country. Okay. Yes, go ahead. Yes, Lisa.
No, I wanted to make, because Lori brought up a really good point that I'm seeing over and over again, and was just conversating with someone about this idea of what address I will use when I move overseas. And part of it is, right, maybe you're selling your house, or, well, you know, you're giving up your residence in the United States, but you need a US address. So first of all, and then the issues come in, most of the issues, then you try and apply for a banking service, or usually banking, but it actually could be any kind of service in the US, and your address, your virtual address, is identified as non-resident. And that's where I was saying some financial institutions will close your account, some won't open them for you. So here's just like a really quick thing. First of all, as US citizens, we are US residents, everything. We are, and I've heard like other investment professionals, because this is a big question, we're entitled, if we want, to have a virtual mailbox or to have just a mailing address. I myself have had a virtual address for over 10 years. Whether Citibank or Charles Schwab or Fidelity or whatever are going to recognize that and allow you to open a bank account is a totally different thing. Also keep in mind that a US address and a US phone number are key identifiers, not to get in the weeds and everything with compliance and risk, but it basically means you don't have those things, you don't exist, basically, right? It's like your social security number. The expectation is that you'll have a US address, you'll have a US phone number. If you don't, you're high risk, what's wrong with you, kind of. So I want people to kind of keep that in mind, because it comes up a lot. Like I said, usually people can't get a bank account. These financial institutions will close their bank account. Usually that's driven by compliance and risk, saying, now we don't want anybody whose address we can't verify, and we can't verify that it's not a residential address and they don't live there. Okay. All right. Well, then that's that. But I encourage, someone was texting me, I was helping her out. I see people who, honestly, and I've said this before, it's like they don't want to pay for that. They move overseas, I'll never come back, I don't want to pay for that. Those are two things that you should not really cut from your budget, especially in the short term. They are key identifiers for most things for your life in the US. Bank account, how many times I say, well, what's your phone number? What's your address? And then they look it up. So I just wanted to, Lori kind of brought that up, and I still see that a lot, where people don't know what they should do. Or I just had a guy yesterday who's selling his property in Florida and he wants to travel and was wondering if he should get a virtual address in Florida. I said, yeah. And then I see people say, well, why can't I use my family? I never tell people not to use their family, but identity theft is rampant among people who live a global lifestyle. Family is great, but do you know if your Aunt Minnie has someone living with her who's a criminal or is doing dumpster diving? So you just have to be careful. When you sign on with one of these virtual mailboxes, they do everything online. They log your information. They log your mail. What if you get a letter from the IRS? If it's like my family, oh yeah, I think you got that letter. That was 3 months ago. You know, you want something where you could see wherever you are in the world so you can address it, whether it be the IRS or whether it be jury duty, which has happened to me. And also you might not want your family to see all your mail. You know, you might not. And also remember, mail and mail tampering, things like that, those are federal offenses. So Lori brought, you know, just the mail up, and that's a real reoccurring theme with people. So
Lisa, how did you handle jury duty?
Jury duty was a mess because my family, my brother said, oh, I think you got that piece of mail. It was 2 months later. I sent them the letter. Let me tell you, Cheryl, I'm glad you brought that up. In some states, in the state of New York, if you don't do the jury duty and they don't get your response, you get fined. So they never got my letter. I actually had to go down there and I actually said, I don't believe this. What do you mean you get fined? Show me fined, and it could end up on your credit. I was like, you need to show this to me. And it's a New York State statute that it was written, they sent it to me. And I think when I came home on one of the rare occasions, I was able to go down there and show my visa for China that I don't live here and it got lost in the mail. But it was kind of serious because I was, you know, they would have assessed the payment and it would have ended up on my credit report. And, you know, that would have, if I had not seen it or gotten it, that was an example of my brother going, oh yeah, I think you got that piece of, and I did have a virtual mailbox, but for some reason, some things, you know, some things do fall through the crack, and that did.
So can you tell the state I'm out of the state, and so you can get out of jury duty?
You could, but they didn't receive my letter.
Oh,
They didn't.
okay.
They didn't. And in New York State, they had not received my letter. And I was just like, I live in China. You know, some states for that, and you know, we didn't talk about Cheryl, state taxes, which everybody forgets about.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah,
We don't think about state taxes in Texas because we don't
Right,
have them.
right.
Which
Right.
you know, California, I didn't know I lived in one of the worst states for expats, although if I had time between China and California, I went back to New York and established residency, the driver's license, the voting, everything. California still harassed me and still thought I owed, that I was a resident. I had to show them my Chinese work visa too. They're one of the worst states. What's the other one, Cheryl? South Carolina?
I thought it was New York, because New York has state taxes.
New York's not too bad. I think it's South Carolina, Virginia, and New Mexico are supposedly the four worst. Some of them, they're bad. Let me just say something about no state tax. This is not always popular, but I'm going to say it anyway. You know, because I see a lot of investment advisors telling people to move to Florida, move here, things like that. When you kind of establish residency in a state, what do you have to do? You have to get your driver's license. You have to vote in that state. I'm particular about where I want to be, where I want to vote, because I like voting from abroad, and what I want to support, even though I'm abroad. So for me, I'm not, unless something changes in New York, I'm not going to move to a state because of no state income. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
That's an issue. There's an issue.
Right. But voter registration card and driver's license are important for a
Yes.
state that you want to be a resident of.
That's right.
Because that helps prove that you are a resident of that
That's
state,
right.
even though you're traveling or
right.
you're living abroad.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I established both of them, and California was still like, no. But you're right, they're very, very important. I'm just saying that I'm not interested in establishing residency in Texas, or because I would do the voting. And I don't want to do that in Texas or Florida.
Okay.
But some people don't
Excellent.
care. They don't,
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
care.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to make sure as we're getting ready to wrap up, first, I want to thank all of you, Lisa and Cheryl, for participating in our second live chat. The next one will be we'll be saying hello 2022 for the next one, which has not yet been announced, but will be coming up soon with that. And also thank you so much for all of you who participated, showed up live. We've got Lori, Steph or Steve, I'm never quite sure how to pronounce that, Susan, Corin, William, and Andrea. We are Adrian. I'm sorry, Adrian. We are so glad that you participated and showed up for us today. We're so thankful, and we look forward to seeing you again for other live chats. And one last thing I want to mention, look for that email. We'll be sending it out within a week. It's going to have the information that we covered here, the PDFs and all that information. And I'm sorry, but I got to put in yet again another plug. This is just one of 8 covers, by the way, taking from my time in Belize home. And these are the Mayan fabric textile covers. There are 4 of them, total of 4. And then I also have a cover series of 8 from the National Palace in El Salvador when I was visiting in El Salvador. The contents are the same. Once again, we're not just talking about blank pages, we're talking about prompts to help you organize your digital nomad journeys. Each planner journal covers 1 country and 3 destinations, country, state, or region, and 3 destinations within that country, state, or region. So you have planning for each of those major cities or areas that you decide to travel to. Thank you once again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Have a wonderful holiday season and an extraordinary launch for 2022. We'll see you then. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.